Do you have a child who's anxious or stressed? The differences between anxiety and stress are subtle, in fact, probably to the point of being insignificant, and they overlap. So we'll cover both anxiety and stress together. Do you see these behaviors or conditions in your child on a regular basis? As follows. Like fear of making decisions. Sometimes we call that worrying. Very little difference, little to none. Sometimes children are just paralyzed with a fear of making decisions or by a generalized anxiety that they can't even put their finger on. They can't point to a specific thing they're worried about, even though they obviously are worried or anxious or stressed. You might be seeing a child who has difficulty with beginning tasks that have to be done, like chores around the house or homework. Do they put everything off until, you know the word, later? Do they get frustrated with doing things and just quit in the middle of jobs or homework? Do they have a short attention span? Or instead of difficulty with beginning or finishing jobs, some anxious, stressed children feel driven to finish everything. In fact, to keep piling things on. And the burden of all that stress just crushes them. Do you see an anxiety about them being around other people? Do they avoid other people? Do they avoid gatherings? Do they avoid family activities? Do they mostly spend time by themselves? Do you see more than the usual feelings, because these feelings are fairly common in mankind, of guilt, worthlessness, sudden angry statements like, I just can't do anything right, helplessness, hopelessness, pessimism? Some anxious and stressed children demonstrate a depressed mood, a loss of interest in usual activities, or decreased energy. Do you see a fear of making mistakes? Do they get frustrated and discouraged when they do make mistakes, like I can't do anything right? Do they talk about how bad things are in the world? Does the news frighten them? Or are they frightened by things in their own lives? Do they just live small, constricted, limited lives, not engaged in the world around them? All of these things are signs of anxiety, stress. If you see any of it, or a lot of it, it can be pretty scary. It's like your child is slowly disappearing into a world of fear. That is scary. What would you give to have a happy child back? And I'm here to tell you that there is a solution. And we're not talking about controlling or minimizing the symptoms that we just talked about. That's not nearly enough. We're talking about a real transformation where your child becomes happy, fulfilled, responsible, like a human being again, and almost always without the use of medications, which themselves have a long list of problems that they generate. In most cases, what you get is a child much happier than they were before they began to demonstrate anxiety or stress. Welcome to the answers you've been hoping for. For a long time now, you've been looking for ways to help your child, and I greatly admire what you're doing right this minute. You're looking for answers. You're trying to love and help your child, which is way more than most parents do. Most parents settle with just complaining. And finally, you're in the right place. It's like you've been paddling around in the middle of the ocean, desperately looking for help, and now, almost unbelievably, the help is here. This is the ship you've been looking for. Now, how could I possibly make such an extravagant claim? Because I know how to teach parents how to help their children be happy. What I teach has been used by uncounted thousands of parents, and it works consistently. I'm not trying to sell you something here that we're going to do. You don't have to wait. The training begins right now. In the next few seconds, in fact, I'll be teaching you things about your children and yourselves that you've never known. What a relief to know that right now you're exactly where you've wanted to be. You can learn what you need to learn. Finally, you can feel encouraged. You can feel hope. You can help your child, and I'm going to help you do that. You wouldn't be here unless two things were true. First, you have a child who is often anxious or stressed. And two, you care enough to do something about it. I know you've tried to change things, a lot of things, lots of talking and attempts to calm them, maybe counseling, maybe medication, certainly lots of ideas from books and programs that you've tried, encouragement, and a ton of worrying on your part. But your child is still anxious and stressed. And you're frustrated and tired. You've been looking for something that works, dying to find it, in fact, and here it is. Principles that have proven to work hundreds of thousands of times all over the world. If parents are thoroughly committed to learning and practicing what I'm going to share with you now, predictably, I see children lose their anxiety and their stress. It just goes away. And instead, they become genuinely happy. Even after everything else has failed, you become pretty happy too. It is not hopeless. I'm here to help you, and I'll be using the insight and experience of counseling with thousands of parents, and from writing 20 books and endless articles on the subject, as well as appearing on 1,600 radio and television shows and presentations and seminars all around the world, and much more. You are about to change the world around you, and you don't have to do it alone, which is miserable and frustrating. You've already proven that with your own experience. So now the question that has to be on your mind: what am I going to teach you that you don't already know? What am I going to say that you haven't already read or heard somewhere else? This is going to be revolutionary for you to hear. So slow down your brain and listen with your soul. What does a child need more than anything else? That's a question we don't ask much. After food, water, and air, the obvious, the answer is again very obvious, and yet we keep missing it over and over. To see the answer more easily, let's start with an infant. When an infant cries, other than from obvious physical pain, what does he want? You already know, because you just pick him up. You're pretty smart about that. You already know that every child wants to feel cared for. Every child wants to feel loved. Picking them up and holding them is just a demonstration of that. And if you're genuine in caring about them, they feel it. But infants are relatively easy to love. They smile and melt your heart and make cute little noises, and they laugh in ways that we never hear anywhere else. They're adorable. But when they get older, they learn to spill things and make messes and ferociously say no when you tell them what to do, and scream in their car seat and fight with their siblings and refuse to listen to you and say ugly and hateful things to you and other people. And sometimes they just give up the fight and give in to the crippling feelings of being anxious and afraid all the time. They feel stressed beyond their ability to describe. They learn quite a list of behaviors that make them a lot harder to love. And when that happens, we really don't know what to do. Usually we try to control their behaviors, and we might even temporarily succeed, but it doesn't last. And we end up with kids who are still anxious and stressed and unhappy. We're not so happy either. Let me say this another way. If our children become more difficult to love as their behavior changes, that proves we don't know how to love them unconditionally. If we did love them unconditionally, we'd love them no matter what. But if loving them becomes more difficult when they're difficult, whining, arguing, fighting, withdrawing, even anxious and stressed and paralyzed with fear, our love is conditional. Unconditional love, or what I call real love, means caring about another person without wanting anything from them in return. But we do expect something in return for loving our children, like respect, cooperation, gratitude, and a certain level of reasonable behavior, which they can't do while they're afraid and worried and anxious and stressed. They can't. Now, more about unconditional love. That kind of love would mean that our love would not be affected by what they do. That's what unconditional love means. But we really don't know how to do that. How do I know? We prove it every time we become angry or disappointed or impatient or irritated at them. Our anger and disappointment and frustration are undeniable proof that our love is not unconditional. Now, deep inside, you can feel that what I'm saying is true, but let me demonstrate a little further. When other people are angry at you, do you like it? Like, no, you don't. Not ever. Nobody does. When other people are angry at us, or when we're angry at other people, we're all saying, look at what you did to me, or failed to do for me. When we're angry, we are focused on ourselves. Me, me, me. And in that moment, other people, notably our children, hear only 4 words: I don't love you. When we're angry, we're far too occupied with ourselves to unconditionally love anybody. I repeat, when we are angry at another person, including our child, they hear only, I don't love you. I promise you that this is true. And no, we don't mean to say that, but what else could people hear while our words, tone, and behavior are screaming, me, me, me? I don't love you is what you hear and feel when people are angry at you. Think about that. And it's what our children hear and feel when we're angry at them. Again, we do not mean to do this. We do not mean to hurt our children. Ridiculous. But it was inevitable because we were not loved unconditionally, which means being consistently loved without disappointment or anger, loved freely with no conditions. So how could we possibly have learned to unconditionally love our own children? Impossible. Nobody is to blame. Our ignorance of real love has simply perpetuated over generations. We don't know how to love unconditionally because we've never seen it or felt it with any consistency. For emphasis, I'm going to say all of this in a slightly different way. When children are afraid, anxious, stressed, burdened, paralyzed, it is always a reaction to them not feeling loved unconditionally, loved with no disappointment, irritation, frustration, or anger. No kidding. Now, that could sound discouraging, even bleak. Overall, it is kind of bleak. Look at the world, at the utter obsession with things that are distractions from our pain, from our not feeling loved, like endless entertainment, addiction to electronics, anger, controlling people, drugs, alcohol, sex, and on and on. There is the proof that overall, we do not know how to love people unconditionally. If we did, and I speak here with vast experience, all those behaviors I just listed would not exist. I've been teaching unconditional love now for so many years to so many parents that I can tell you this with complete certainty. When a child truly feels love unconditionally, he or she is not afraid, does not worry, does not feel anxious, does not feel stressed. Instead, they're happy and responsible and have all those qualities that you wish they had. With sufficient love, there is simply no need to feel afraid or worried or anxious or stressed. No need at all. Happy people just don't feel like that. Period. It seems almost like this statement is too broad, too much. It's not. So that is what I'll be teaching you. How to love your children unconditionally, which then gives them a reason to listen to you. How many times have you thought in your own head, why does this child not listen to a single thing I say? Well, there's an answer. And here it is. Because when you're irritated, your child hears only, I don't love you. And that is so devastating that he or she hears none of the rest of the content of what you say. If you love them unconditionally, they can hear you, what you're trying to say, because they're not distracted by their fear. They're not blinded and deafened by the I don't love you message. Then it becomes possible for you to teach them, well, anything, like how to be loving and responsible themselves. And if they have that powerful trifecta, they feel loved and they are loving and responsible, it is a guarantee that they will be happy, which is the ultimate goal for any parent, or frankly, for any person. Your children can learn that being genuinely happy feels way better than feeling anxious or stressed or burdened or afraid, and they will choose happy. Take my hand and we'll talk about what you can do and how I will support you. It will almost be like starting over as a parent. You're going to learn how to be a real parent. And your child will learn the lessons of life that will benefit him or her for the rest of their lives. If you implement what you learn here, and if you do it consistently, you simply will not believe the differences you'll see in your child, and in you, and in your family. Imagine it. No more worrying or fussing or anxiety or talking about how they're all stressed out about everything. No more paralysis around decisions. No more fussing about decisions or outcomes or withdrawal from the family or loss of interest in everything. No more having to constantly encourage and reaffirm. No more tension in the family. It's astonishing to see and to feel. Our children are not defective. They're not bad. We're not bad. We just have not known how to love and teach them. What we're doing with our kids now is not working. Loving and teaching them does. Rarely is it too late to change whatever unproductive behaviors you're dealing with. Not if you're really willing to learn and apply these principles to the interactions with your child. I promise you, learning how to be a real parent is worth it. We're about to learn how to eliminate the behaviors in your children that are hurting them and making you crazy. Really. And I make you another promise. Learning to be an effective, loving parent is easier than everything else you've done as a parent up to this point. We're really going to get into this. This is not a casual effort. We're not looking to make your children more manageable as though they were objects. That's not even close to enough. Our mission is to help you to become a powerful and effective parent and to help your child feel loved and to be loving, responsible, and genuinely happy. It's a transformation. If you are truly committed to learning how to parent, I'm fully committed to teaching you. And I will bring resources to the table you never thought about. The rewards are spectacular, as we have seen in uncounted thousands of families. There is not a single thing you will ever do that will ring through the ages more powerfully than being a loving and effective parent. You can do this. So let's learn some more. Let's get started. Click the button below. It's free to begin transforming your life as a ridiculously effective parent.